Sophie, till late in the third quarter, you guys were struggling offensively in that frame. Second half in general didn't feel the same as the first half on that end. Did something change for you guys? What did you see as kind of leading to stalling on that end?
Yeah, I think we were just kind of slow. And every time that we're slow, especially defensively, it just somehow affects our offense.
The Indiana Fever just managed to turn a must-win game into another collapse. And this time, the frustration is boiling over from every direction. Sophie Cunningham didn't hold back after the buzzer, calling out the team's lack of toughness and effort in a way that cut deeper than any box score. The Fever had the game in their hands, a double-digit lead, momentum on their side, Aaliyah Boston dominating inside, and Kelsey Mitchell creating early offense. Yet, somehow, in a matter of minutes, all of it unraveled. Washington, a team sitting at the very bottom of the standings, ripped off a 22-7 run that flipped the entire game on its head. Fans inside the arena could feel the shift, and instead of responding with adjustments and poise, Indiana froze. Possessions stalled, fouls piled up, and the same story that's haunted this team all year played out again. A winnable game turned into another painful lesson. Cunningham's honesty in the post-game press conference stood in stark contrast to Stephanie White's excuses. While the players were calling for accountability and demanding that Indiana get back to being dogs, the head coach was pointing to fouls and injuries without addressing the decisions that left Chloe Bibby on the bench and the offense stuck in repetitive isolation. This loss wasn't just about one bad quarter. It was about a team that can't afford to keep wasting opportunities in a playoff race that's getting tighter by the day. And the biggest question fans are asking right now is simple. Is this about injuries, bad luck, or is coaching the real problem? For much of the first half, it actually looked like Indiana had learned from its recent collapses. The Fever came out aggressive, attacking mismatches and punishing Washington's shaky defense. Aaliyah Boston was locked in from the start, establishing deep position, forcing double teams, and still managing to score efficiently. Every time she touched the ball, Washington scrambled, and that opened up early shots for Kelsey Mitchell and Sophie Cunningham. Odyssey Sims, still fresh off a hardship signing, gave the kind of spark you expect from a veteran fighting for her spot, pushing pace, threading passes, and keeping Indiana's offense flowing. By the middle of the second quarter, the Fever were up by 13 points. The ball movement looked crisp, the defensive rotations were holding, and it felt like they were about to bury a bottom-dwelling Mystics team. The crowd was engaged, the energy was high, and everything pointed toward Indiana finally grabbing a comfortable win. But here's where the red flags started to creep in. Even while the Fever were building that lead, sloppy turnovers and silly fouls were piling up. Instead of tightening the screws, they gave Washington small openings, and the Mystics took full advantage. It wasn't a star takeover or a sudden burst of brilliance from the opponent. It was Indiana's own mistakes that started swinging momentum. Those wasted possessions and careless giveaways would soon set the stage for the collapse nobody in the building saw coming. It was the second half that told the story. Washington wasn't playing out of their minds, they didn't need to. Indiana handed them every opportunity to seize control. The Mystics came out of halftime with a purpose, and in the blink of an eye, they'd ripped off a 22-7 run that shattered Indiana's confidence. The Fever, who had been cruising just moments before, suddenly looked disoriented. Washington found its rhythm, knocking down open threes and taking advantage of every slip in the Indiana defense. Kiki, a force in the paint, was grabbing offensive rebounds and punishing Indiana for every missed box out. At the same time, Indiana's offense, which had been so fluid in the first half, turned into a chaotic mess. Kelsey Mitchell, despite her best efforts, found herself stuck in isolation, fighting through double teams and forcing shots into traffic. Every time she drove, the paint was crowded, and the ball just wasn't moving the way it needed to. But the real backbreaker? Indiana's lack of defensive discipline. The Fever handed Washington 26 free throw attempts throughout the game, and 14 of those came in the fourth quarter alone. Every careless foul sent the Mystics to the line, chipping away at what should have been a comfortable lead. With every missed rotation and blown assignment, Washington crept closer, and the energy in the arena, once electric, was now deflated. Fans could feel the shift, and it was painfully clear. Indiana had no answers. Despite the collective meltdown, Indiana wasn't short on individual effort. Aaliyah Boston continued to play like an anchor, posting 20 points and 9 rebounds. She was the only one consistently demanding attention in the paint, getting deep positioning, and forcing Washington's defense to collapse every time she touched the ball. But even her dominant play wasn't enough to hold off the Tide. Kelsey Mitchell did everything she could, stepping up as both the primary scorer and facilitator, finishing with 14 points and 9 assists. Her ability to create opportunities in transition and dish out assists kept Indiana alive. But as the game dragged on, Mitchell's workload became unsustainable. Sophie Cunningham, always known for her gritty play, delivered her usual high-energy hustle, contributing 8 points, 6 assists, and 3 steals. Her highlight steal and quick transition 3 were the type of momentum-shifting plays that should have reinvigorated her team, yet it wasn't enough. Lexi Hull stepped up defensively as always, but the roster was simply stretched too thin. Odyssey Sims, still adjusting to a new role on this roster, had 11 points off the bench and showed flashes of why she was brought in to steady the offense. Still, even her best efforts couldn't mask the fact that Indiana was a team with talent but no clear structure or leadership in a tight game. They kept fighting, kept pushing, but when every mistake leads to a turnover, a foul, or a missed rotation, even the best efforts fall short. As the game spiraled, all eyes turned to the one thing that fans felt could have been the game changer: coaching decisions. The most glaring issue was the complete absence of Chloe Bibby from the court. Despite being one of Indiana's most reliable shooters, hitting 42% from beyond the arc this season, Bibby logged 0 minutes in a game where perimeter shooting was desperately needed. With the offense stagnating, especially as Mitchell was forced to create everything in isolation, fans couldn't understand why Bibby wasn't brought in to stretch the floor and provide some relief for Mitchell. When asked about it, Stephanie White explained that Bibby's absence was due to defensive concerns, specifically worries about rebounding and coverage responsibilities against Washington's lineup. But as the game played out, with the Fever struggling to contain Kiki in the paint and giving up 26 free throw attempts, it became evident that those concerns weren't enough to justify sidelining a proven shooter. The reality was clear. While Bibby was missing from the rotation, Indiana's offense grew more predictable and easier to defend. White's explanation felt like a deflection, as the team's larger problems, defensive breakdowns, poor rotations, and a lack of offensive flow were glaringly obvious. The decision to leave Bibby on the bench while the Mystics pounded the paint and rained threes was one that felt like a missed opportunity, and it left fans asking the same question: why not use the pieces you have? The contrast between what the players said after the game and what Stephanie White conveyed in her post-game comments couldn't have been starker. Sophie Cunningham's blunt, no-nonsense honesty became the voice of reason as she demanded accountability. Cunningham, who's never afraid to speak her mind, called out the team's lack of effort and focus, saying outright that the Fever had lost their edge. "We have to get back to being dogs," she said, a clear challenge to her teammates and the coaching staff alike. It was the type of direct challenge the team needed, a demand for urgency that had been missing for too long. Cunningham didn't hide behind injuries or excuses. She acknowledged the struggles but made it clear that the effort was there and the problem lay in not executing the right game plan. Meanwhile, White's comments seemed disconnected from the intensity of the situation. She pointed to the usual suspects: fouls, missed rotations, and the absence of Caitlin Clark. While she wasn't wrong to highlight the team's struggles with fouling, the Fever sent Washington to the line 26 times. Her focus on these issues without addressing the more immediate tactical problems raised eyebrows. White was quick to cite external factors like the injuries and roster changes, but Cunningham and her teammates were already focused on the internal changes that needed to happen: discipline, focus, and accountability. White's explanation about how the offense was getting stuck didn't land with the same urgency as Cunningham's call for change. It was the perfect example of how leadership needs to match the moment, and right now, the players seem ready for change, while the coach appears to be stuck in explanations rather than solutions. The larger question that looms after this loss is, where does Indiana go from here? It's not just about one blown game, it's about a growing disconnect between the players and the coaching staff that seems to be seeping into the team's identity. Sophie Cunningham's call to get back to being dogs wasn't just a motivational speech, it was a reminder of what made the Fever dangerous in the first place. their gritty, relentless play. But instead of rallying around that mentality, the Fever are now stuck in a loop of missed opportunities, tactical mistakes, and a lack of leadership on the floor. The contrast between Cunningham's direct, player-driven accountability and White's more passive approach leaves fans wondering if this team can truly push through its adversity. While the players are out there grinding, trying to compensate for the holes in the lineup, the coach's inability to adapt or find quick fixes is starting to cost them. And as the season winds down, those missed adjustments are becoming harder to ignore. The Fever are sitting on the bubble of the playoffs, and with every game more critical than the last, it's clear that something needs to change and fast. The upcoming games will determine whether Indiana can rally behind the players' fire or whether the same mistakes will continue to drag them down. It's a do-or-die moment for both the team and their coach. If White can't find a way to adjust and tap into the urgency her players are showing, this roster, talented as it is, could be heading for another early playoff exit. The pressure is mounting, and time is running out. As the Fever's playoff hopes hang in the balance, one undeniable truth stands out. They continue to shoot themselves in the foot when the stakes are at their highest. This loss to Washington wasn't just about letting a lead slip away. It was about a series of missed opportunities, the kind of mistakes that come back to haunt a team when every game matters. With just a handful of games remaining, every loss feels like a death sentence for their playoff positioning, and yet the Fever keep repeating the same costly errors. The turnovers in the second half, especially the careless giveaways that turned into easy points for Washington, highlighted just how fragile Indiana's hold on the game was. With every loose ball and missed rotation, the Mystics were gifted new life, and Indiana didn't respond with the poise needed to close it out. It wasn't just about fouls. Either it was about execution, about recognizing the moment, and making the right decisions when the game was on the line. Kelsey Mitchell, despite her best efforts, couldn't carry the entire offense. She's been forced into a role where she's both the primary scorer and playmaker, and it's simply too much for her to shoulder alone. Meanwhile, with key pieces sidelined, the Fever are left asking too much of too few. But it's not just the players who need to adjust. The coaching staff, and specifically Stephanie White, have to step up and make those crucial decisions that can turn these close losses into wins. The team needs better rotations, smarter shot selections, and the kind of leadership that can hold everyone accountable when the game is slipping away. Without those changes, the playoff race will become a painfully distant dream. The road ahead for the Indiana Fever is a brutal one. With playoff positioning on the line and every loss carrying more weight than the last, this is make or break time for the team. The pressure is mounting, and if they don't figure out how to put it all together, the rest of the season could slip away in a heartbeat. For the Fever, it starts with fixing the glaring gaps that have been exposed throughout this season. The lack of offensive flow, the defensive breakdowns, and the questionable coaching decisions that have left fans frustrated. If Indiana wants to make a playoff push, they need to become more adaptable, more aggressive, and more disciplined traits that they've shown flashes of but never sustained for a full game. Sophie Cunningham's fiery post-game comments were a wake-up call for the team. Her call to get back to being dogs isn't just about mindset, it's about playing with an edge, controlling the tempo, and not allowing a single missed rotation or careless foul to dictate the game. But to truly rally behind Cunningham's challenge, the Fever need to move beyond isolated plays and be a cohesive unit, both offensively and defensively. With Caitlin Clark still on the bench, it's clear that others need to step up, and they need to do it quickly. This is the point where talent and effort must meet strategy. And that responsibility falls squarely on both the players and the coaching staff. If White can't adjust and build a plan that maximizes the team's strengths using shooters like Bibby, spacing the floor, and adjusting rotations, then this season could slip through their fingers before they even make it to the playoffs. The Fever have shown they can fight, but the question now is whether they have the leadership and strategy to finish what they started. As the Indiana Fever stand on the brink of their playoff hopes, it's clear that the next few games will define their season. With the roster stretched thin by injuries and crucial players sidelined, it's up to the remaining core to step up. Aaliyah Boston, Kelsey Mitchell, and Sophie Cunningham have shown they can carry this team with their individual brilliance, but brilliance alone won't be enough. The Fever need to play as a unit, a cohesive, disciplined force that doesn't give away leads or let mistakes spiral into losses. Coaching decisions, specifically the absence of players like Chloe, Bibby, and the lack of offensive adjustments, must be addressed if they're to find a winning formula. There's no more room for excuses and no more time for indecision. The pressure is squarely on Stephanie White to find solutions that push Indiana past their limitations, rather than allowing the same patterns to repeat. As Cunningham said, it's time to get back to being dogs. But can they do it? Will White make the necessary adjustments to unlock this team's full potential, or will the Fever's season collapse under the weight of missed opportunities? The answers will come quickly, and the road ahead will be unforgiving. Indiana's playoff dreams are still alive, but only if they can put everything together before it's too late. What do you think? Is it time for a change in strategy or leadership? Should White be held accountable for these missed opportunities? Let us know in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next breakdown. Click the video on your screen to dive deeper into more WNBA analysis, and we'll see you next time.